Today, Uzbekistan24 TV channel continues its release. Recently, the first Center for Contemporary Art launched in Tashkent City. This pilot project is managed by the Art and Culture Development Foundation under the Ministry of Culture. The large-scale project includes exhibitions, performances, lectures, seminars, film screenings, as well as children's and family workshops with the participation of international guests. Among the main experts who came to our country is today's guest of our interview, Andrea Lissoni, Senior Curator of the Gallery of Contemporary Art in London. Welcome to our studio.
Thank you.
Contemporary art is a part of a cultural dialogue that concerns larger contextual frameworks such as personal and cultural identity, family, community and nationality. As a phenomenon, it's something that is not always understood and accepted. How do you think, is it necessary to refine the taste for the modern art and to learn to feel it?
Contemporary art is a very important part of our culture. It's, I guess, a stereotype thinking that it's not easy to understand. It's a part of knowledge. It really belongs to a long tradition. It started maybe millennia ago, and it was really challenged in the last century. So I believe the best way to understand, if one wants to understand, is to start from the normal modern art museums and try to bridge the gap, try to understand what comes next, what comes after. And what comes after, it's what happens today, and it started more or less in the last 30 years. So why a contemporary art center is necessary, this is perhaps the question, because it is able to support a different way of seeing, viewing, understanding and reading the current landscape, the current society and the current cultural field.
The large-scale project on creating the first contemporary art center is implemented by the Art and Culture Development Foundation. What can you tell about the development of this center in Tashkent and your recommendations for its development?
I arrived in Tashkent, I think, 3 days before the opening of the Contemporary Art Center, and I couldn't believe my eyes. It's a very beautiful building. It's a building that has now 110 years and has been preserved impeccably, and temporary refurbishment works is really giving light and making the building so splendid, but also keeping it very modest. My feeling is that the idea of beginning with a show of a local artist based in Paris with a relevance in the international art field was the best one could have. And from an international perspective, some colleagues of mine came from various countries, from Europe. Even more than a wonderful beginning, it's a rewarding beginning for a country deciding to open with an artist that is a woman, that speaks about women, that demonstrate what does it mean to be a woman in this country and in this region more in general, and how important it was, and it has been throughout century to be a woman. So on the point of view of the first step, well, no one could imagine a best beginning.
Within the framework of the project, a personal exhibition, Kurgan Chirag, that means Light on the Hill, is being held. The author of the project is a talented artist, Saudat Ismailova. And we know that you are also worked on the project in collaboration with Saudat Ismailova. Tell us about this exhibition and your contribution to it.
So I came to Tashkent more than 10 years ago because of Saudat Ismailova, who is a friend and who at the time was a really promising filmmaker, and one of the few of the region. And I started a conversation with her, and I was pleased to see how her work was developing, growing, and particularly from 2013, when she represented Uzbekistan at the Venice Biennial as part of a pavilion about Central Asia. I could witness her practice growing so fast and her language changing and developing in such an interesting manner. So basically, when she told me that she was preparing an exhibition here, we had a dialogue, as that always happens with a curator. What would be best, how to display her work, what should be displayed and what wouldn't be better to display, in which position. So we basically spoke about the architecture, we spoke about the sequence, we spoke about the sound, we spoke about where to install works in the basement. There is a very fascinating basement that can be traversed. And of course, we had also conversation about her practice. So I learned so much when I had to take seriously, and even more seriously, a work of someone I consider a friend.
What's the meaning of the exhibition, Qur'an Chirag?
So the exhibition of Sadat Ismailova is a historical exhibition in the sense that there has never been an exhibition based on multimedia, video installation in this country. So in that sense, this is already one important starting point. And then on top of this is an exhibition that doesn't land from somewhere, but comes from the desire of working with a local artist. The exhibition is not happening only on one floor, but is also happening in the basement of the space. So one enters the space and encounters 4 works, one after the other, and then another in a room, and then some works in the basement. So it's a very, very articulated exhibition, and that's also quite important. It's just not one work, it's a selection, and they are very carefully installed.
Thank you for extended answer. The next question is about an open meeting held in April the 30th in the Center for Contemporary Art, conducted by you. The title of the lecture was Supervision in Contemporary Art. Can you share with us about the important moments of this lecture?
I was asked to give a lecture, and I tried, as I always do, as a first step, to understand who will be attending the lecture in order to tune and not to frustrate any expectations. So the easiest for me, and perhaps also the most relevant for the public, was to share what does it mean to be a curator, where this work comes from, and how one can merge his passion for caring about art and his background of being an historian, or an art historian, someone who has a knowledge about art. So I try to explain to the audience that even though I'm specialized in moving images, in sound, in performance, and in works that doesn't necessarily have to do with objects like sculpture and painting, the spirit must be the same. One must be attentive, must be very responsible about the works and the artist, and also taking care. But the most relevant, which is something you don't necessarily consider, every time you open an exhibition, you contribute to a public act that will become part of an history. So you really need to be responsible, because that history will be challenged, will be seen in the future, will be considered, and will be perhaps also criticized. So the more you try to do your job with responsibility, and also to be part of any process of mediation, connecting to the past history and imagining what the future will be, and the better.
Tell us about the program which are going on till June the 1st.
So the Arts and Culture Development Foundation had, I think, a really great vision when deciding to launch the Contemporary Arts Center. It's not about making an exhibition and then leaving. It's about farming an environment. It's about gardening a garden somehow. You can never do an exhibition and then leave. You really need to have life within that place. So I think that whoever will go to the center till the 1st of June will be not only encountering a beautiful show, but also a very dense program of workshops, projects made for children, screenings. There is a section run by the most prestigious museum in Moscow, but also one of the most important museums in the world, which is Garage. And there is a special series of screenings that was suggested by Sadat Ismailova with Ali Kamrev. So I think it's a very generous offer to begin to encounter contemporary art, but also to discover the imaginary and the world around Sadat Ismailova.
And what about reconstructions works, which will begin from June till 2020?
The exhibition of Sadat Ismailova will be closing on the 1st of June, so therefore lasting 1.5 months. The center will be full of activity, so my suggestion is to take this opportunity to visit many times if possible, also because Sadat Ismailova work requires a degree of concentration and one can go back and back. But also it's a unique opportunity to see the building in its raw state, in its crude state, because on the 1st of June, the building will be closing, and for a year or a little bit more, until 2020, it will be refurbished. Although, and it is very important to say, the original structure that was made in 1999 won't be touched and will be completely preserved. So I am looking forward to see the shape that the building will be taken in 2020.
As you know, one of the main events of the project was Kyrgyz musical performance directed by Saudat Ismailova. It has been presented on the stage of the Alisher State Grand Theatre on April the 16th and 17th for the first time. If you could enjoy it, share with your impressions about this performance.
I could go to the theatre and see the performance 2 days in a row. Actually, I really wanted to go 2 days in a row, because the first day I sat a little bit in the back of the theatre and I could see a film developing under my eyes. And then I thought how incredible this experience is. It's a sort of multimedia show that I'm sure doesn't happen so often in Tashkent. And then the second day, given the show it's made of a group of fantastic musicians from the area, I decided to go very, very close to, on the first row, very close to the stage, and I could distinctly see the incredible quality of these young musicians performing their songs and also singing the songs they wanted to share under the direction of a wonderful composer. So it's been to me the best opportunity to engage with the tradition of sound and music that is not as known as one will imagine, and it's wonderful, rich, full of history, and all to be shared throughout the world.
What steps should be taken by the Center for Contemporary Art to establish an intercultural dialogue with foreign and neighboring countries, as well as to integrate the art of Uzbekistan into the world cultural content?
I think that the task that the Contemporary Art Center has is a very fascinating one. The history of contemporary museums and art center is all about telling other narratives, telling other stories. So the beginning with Saudat Ismailova's show was great. Now I think the most important is trying to rebalance the history of modern and contemporary art towards this country that has a wonderful history and it's not so known in the Western country. The first step I would personally recommend is not necessarily to import big show from abroad, but rather continuing that path, dialoguing possibly with the region around, with all countries, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and perhaps beginning to think about group shows. And perhaps bringing, yes, a couple of artists from abroad. So trying to pollinate, to combine and to establish this dialogue that is the one that makes things changing and makes project developing. So this is the first suggestion. The second one, and perhaps is a lighter one, but there's also an important one, continuing to bring people, maybe through symposia, maybe through performances, maybe through short residencies or long residencies. Hosting artists is one of the best opportunities that an art center can have, because then artists will be messengers forever. They will be going back to the country, or they'll be traveling again and will be sharing how important that experience in Tashkent for them was.
And about your future plans, I mean collaboration with the Center for Contemporary Art in Tashkent?
I'm really looking forward to seeing how the Contemporary Art Center in Tashkent will be developing. In a sort of dream, I would really love to consider the opportunity to share perhaps the time-based media, the video collection of Tate, and see whether will be the condition to present a selection of works here in Tashkent. If that won't happen, or if that will take more time, I will be anyway always keep an eye connected to what's happening here through Instagram and more to the website, which is really beautiful, and possibly trying to come back after 2020 to see how it will be growing and how it will be developing.
And what about your recommendations to the development of Contemporary Art Center in Tashkent and how it may influence to the development of art in Uzbekistan?
I believe that the Contemporary Art Center will be a crucial player in the contemporary art scene in Uzbekistan beyond art. I am sure it will be very important in the contemporary cultural field. The most important, and that's the risk and the challenge a contemporary art center has to take, is not to forget that it's not a building, it's not a cathedral in the desert, it's rather a sort of transmitter. It's like a broadcasting station that has to engage with everything around. Everything means the proximity, the building around, the university, how do you get there? But also what I was describing as a garden. You need to make sure that there will be perhaps somebody writing, you need to make sure that there will be a good, let's say, dialogue with education, with schools. You need to make sure that perhaps there will be galleries in town and also other artists, and you need to try to help them and support them. If this happens, as I'm sure it will, the next step, or the step that will be running in parallel, will be also bringing in other arts, so performance, for instance, and music, and screenings, and dance, and slowly showing what does it mean to be a contemporary artist, and perhaps having to do with so different media, and I think also influencing the School of Fine Arts in Tashkent at the very end. So a very promising path and a very promising future.
Thank you for your interesting conversation, for coming to our studio. We wish you all the best in your activity. We remind you that this was an interview with a special guest, Andrea Lissoni, Senior Curator of the International Art Department of the Gallery of Contemporary Art from London. Stay with us on Uzbekistan 24 TV channel. See you next time.